Picture a little girl in a white dress running through endless forests. She has blonde hair and bright eyes. She is laughing as she chases butterflies through meadows of wildflowers. Behind her stands a palace, golden in the afternoon sun. Inside that palace, the walls are covered with priceless paintings, old masters worth fortunes. Servants move silently through marble halls. In a grand study, her father sits at an enormous desk, signing papers that will send thousands to their deaths. But the little girl knows nothing of this. She knows only that she is loved, that she is special, that she is the princess of a magical kingdom. This is the childhood of Edda Göring, a childhood of privilege built on mountains of corpses, a fairy tale financed by genocide, and a memory so precious that she would spend the rest of her life defending it against all evidence, against all reason, against all humanity. When she died in 2018 at the age of 80, Edda Göring had never apologized, never acknowledged the truth about her father, never admitted that the magical kingdom of her childhood was actually a house of horrors. She went to her grave believing the lie. This is her story. June 2nd, 1938. The announcement echoed across Nazi Germany. Hermann Göring, the Reichsmarshal, the second most powerful man in the Reich, had a daughter. Adolf Hitler himself agreed to serve as godfather. The birth was treated as a national celebration. Gifts poured in from across Europe. Gold rattles from Italy, silver cups from Spain, jeweled toys from industrial magnates desperate for favor. The hall was so enormous that a warehouse had to be built just to store it all. From her first breath, Edda Göring was drowning in stolen wealth. Her father was a remarkable man in the worst possible way. Hermann Göring had been a genuine hero once. A fighter ace in the Great War, he commanded the legendary flying circus after the Red Baron's death. He was brave, charismatic, and decorated. When Germany lost the war, he lost his purpose. He wandered through the 1920s addicted to morphine, burning with humiliation, searching for something to believe in. He found Adolf Hitler. Göring became one of the earliest and most important Nazis. He gave the movement credibility among the German elite. He provided connections, money, and respectability. When the Nazis seized power, he was rewarded beyond measure. He accumulated titles like a dragon hoards gold. Minister, President of Prussia, Commander of the Luftwaffe, Director of the Four-Year Plan, Reich Master of the Hunt. But his greatest talent was theft. Göring stole on a scale that defies imagination. He had agents across occupied Europe seizing artwork from museums, churches, and private collections. He plundered Jewish families as they were herded onto trains bound for Auschwitz. He took whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. His personal collection eventually included works by Vermeer, Rembrandt, Monet, and dozens of other masters. Experts estimate its value in modern terms at hundreds of millions of dollars. Every piece was stolen. Every masterpiece represented a destroyed life. The centerpiece of Göring's empire was Hall, the vast estate he built north of Berlin. Named after his first wife who died of tuberculosis, Hall grew into a monument to excess. The grounds covered over 100,000 acres of forest, lakes, and hunting grounds. The main house was part hunting lodge, part art museum, part fantasy castle. Göring filled it with his stolen treasures and used it to entertain the Nazi elite. This was where Edda spent her childhood, running through those forests, playing in those gardens, admiring those stolen paintings without knowing where they came from. She remembered it as paradise. It was actually a crime scene. Her mother, Emmy, had been an actress before marrying Göring in 1935. She gave up her career to become the First Lady of the Luftwaffe, a hostess for Nazi high society. By all accounts, she adored her husband and believed in the Nazi cause. She raised Edda in a bubble of privilege and propaganda. The little girl learned that her father was a great man, a hero, a protector of Germany. She learned that the enemies of Germany were evil and deserved whatever happened to them. She learned nothing about concentration camps, mass murder, or industrial genocide. She lived in a fantasy while reality burned around her. The fantasy began to crack in 1943. Allied bombs were falling on German cities every night. The Luftwaffe that Göring commanded was failing to protect the homeland. He had famously boasted that if enemy planes ever bombed Berlin, people could call him Meyer. Now Berlin was burning, and Göring was a laughingstock. Hitler grew contemptuous of his once favorite deputy. Göring retreated into drugs and denial, spending his days at Hall surrounded by stolen art while Germany collapsed. The end came quickly. In April 1945, as Soviet forces closed on Berlin, Göring made a desperate gamble. With Hitler trapped in his bunker, Göring sent a telegram offering to take command of the Reich. Hitler accused him of treason, stripped him of all titles, and ordered his arrest. The second most powerful man in Nazi Germany was suddenly a prisoner of his own side. When American forces captured him weeks later, he was traveling with Emmy and 7-year-old Edda. The fairy tale was finally over. What followed was the greatest trial in history. The International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg gathered the surviving Nazi leadership to face justice for their crimes. Göring was the star defendant, the highest-ranking Nazi captured alive. He approached the trial as his final performance, defending himself and the Nazi cause with intelligence and energy. He denied knowing about the Holocaust. He denied responsibility for slave labor programs. He lied and deflected for months. But the evidence was overwhelming. The documents, the photographs, the testimony of survivors, the death records from the camps. Göring was convicted on all 4 counts: crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity, conspiracy. He was sentenced to hang. He requested a firing squad, the death of a soldier. The request was denied. On the night before his scheduled execution, Göring bit down on a cyanide capsule hidden somewhere on his person. He died in his cell, cheating the hangman one last time. He left behind a letter proclaiming his innocence and his love for his family. Edda was 8 years old. She had seen her father only a few times during the trial, brief, supervised visits that she barely understood. She knew only that bad people were hurting her daddy, that the world was unfair, that everything she had known was gone. Her mother reinforced these beliefs. Emmy never accepted the verdict. She never acknowledged her husband's crimes. She spent the rest of her life defending his memory and teaching Edda to do the same. The post-war years were brutal. Emmy was classified as a major offender during denazification and sentenced to a year of hard labor. Edda was placed in orphanages and foster care. The Princess of Hall was now just another refugee child in the wreckage of Germany. When Emmy was released in 1948, mother and daughter reunited and tried to rebuild. They had lost everything: the estate, the artwork, the jewels, the privilege. They survived on charity from old Nazi networks and on whatever work they could find. But they still had each other, and they still had their shared devotion to Hermann. Emmy kept his letters like holy relics. She displayed his photographs proudly. She told Edda stories about what a wonderful man he had been. She created an alternative history where Hermann Göring was a hero, persecuted by jealous enemies. Edda believed every word. As Edda grew up, she never questioned the narrative. She studied law, perhaps dreaming of someday overturning her father's conviction. She never married. She never had children. She devoted her adult life to 2 causes: protecting her father's memory and trying to reclaim her inheritance. The inheritance battles became her obsession. She filed lawsuit after lawsuit demanding property that had belonged to her father. She claimed artwork hanging in museums. She demanded a government pension. She fought for decades to recover a single painting that captured everything wrong with her crusade. The painting was a work by Lucas Cranach the Elder, a German Renaissance master who died in 1553. It had been stolen from a Jewish art dealer during the Nazi era. The dealer was probably murdered. The painting ended up in Hermann Göring's collection at Hall. After the war, it was held by the German government. Edda sued to get it back. She claimed it as her inheritance. She demanded that the German government hand over artwork stolen from Holocaust victims to the daughter of the man who stole it. The case made international headlines. Holocaust survivors were outraged. Legal scholars debated whether such claims could even be considered. Eventually, German courts ruled against Edda. They established a crucial precedent. The families of Nazi perpetrators could not inherit property stolen by the regime. It was a victory for justice, but Edda never accepted it. She continued filing claims for years. She never stopped believing she was entitled to her father's loot. In rare interviews over the decades, Edda painted a portrait of her father that bore no resemblance to historical reality. He was loving. He was gentle. He was unfairly accused. When asked about the Holocaust, she deflected. When confronted with evidence, she dismissed it as propaganda. She lived in a bubble of denial so complete that nothing could penetrate it. She reportedly stayed connected with other unrepentant Nazis throughout her life. She attended gatherings where elderly veterans of the SS reminisced about the good old days. She was said to have photographs of her father in full Nazi regalia displayed in her home. She visited his grave regularly. She remained until the end her father's most devoted defender. Emmy died in 1973, having successfully transmitted her worldview to the next generation. Edda continued alone for another 45 years. The world changed around her. Germany confronted its past, built memorials to Holocaust victims, made Nazi denial a crime. Edda remained frozen in 1945, still the little girl who believed her daddy was a hero. She died on December 21, 2018, in a Munich hospital. She was 80 years old. She had outlived almost everyone who remembered the Third Reich firsthand. The obituaries noted her passing as a historical footnote, the end of a direct line to Nazi leadership. She left no children. She wrote no memoirs. She offered no final reflections. What remains is a question that will never be fully answered. What could have saved Edda Göring? Was there a path that could have led her to truth? Or was she doomed from birth, her denial so deeply rooted in her identity that nothing could ever uproot it? Psychologists who study children of perpetrators say that many factors determine how they respond to terrible family legacies. The age at which they learn the truth matters. The attitudes of surviving parents matter. The social environment they grow up in matters. Individual personality matters. Edda had the worst possible combination. She was old enough to form deep emotional bonds with her father, but too young to understand his crimes. Her mother reinforced denial rather than encouraging truth. She grew up surrounded by other Nazis and their families, and perhaps her personality was simply inclined toward loyalty over inquiry, belief over evidence. Compare her to Bettina Göring, a great-niece of Hermann Göring. Bettina was so horrified by her family connection that she had herself sterilized to ensure the bloodline would end. She has spoken publicly about her shame and her determination to break the chain of Nazi inheritance. Same family, opposite choices. Or consider Rainer Höss, grandson of Rudolf Höss, the commandant of Auschwitz. Rainer has devoted his life to Holocaust education. He has visited Auschwitz and met with survivors. He carries the burden of his family name by working to ensure the crimes are never forgotten or repeated. These examples show that a different path was possible. Descendants of Nazis can acknowledge the truth, express remorse, and dedicate themselves to prevention. Edda Göring chose not to take this path. She chose the fairy tale over reality. She chose her childhood memories over mountains of evidence. She chose loyalty to a monster over compassion for his victims. That was her choice, and history will remember her for it. The little girl in the white dress never stopped running through those forests. In her mind, the palace still stood golden in the afternoon sun. Her father still sat at his desk, waiting to embrace her. The paintings still hung on the walls, and she never asked where they came from. She lived in that memory for 80 years, and she died there, never waking up to the nightmare that memory really was. Hermann Göring escaped justice with poison. His daughter escaped it through denial. But history does not forget. The evidence remains. The testimony survives. The truth endures. And the final verdict is clear. The Princess of Carenhall was the daughter of a monster who could never admit what her father really was.